Hello, dear Classtime community. I'm extremely happy to have a special guest here today, Nate Ridgway. He's a history teacher and a co-author of Don't Ditch That Tech. And you can also check out his website for more information. And he is also a member of the Classtime Pedagogical Advisory Board, supporting us with great advice over the last few years. And that makes me even more excited to have him on the show today to also show you what we're going to be talking about, which is his experiences as a teacher now in the new, in the middle of COVID online learning world, but also how he uses Classtime in his lessons, hopefully giving you ideas and insights on how to also improve your, lessons. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them, in the comment section. We'll see them. We can also ask Nate. But other than that, I'd like to give Nate the great opportunity to shortly introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Val. So my name is Nate Ridgway. I'm a teacher in Indianapolis, Indiana. And this will be my 7th year teaching. I currently teach an upper level history class that is basically like juniors take it, but it's like as being like if you were a college freshman. Then I also have a freshman level honors geography class. So I come from a background of history, but then also I'm licensed in special education, and then I do a lot of stuff around ed tech and thinking about accessibility and those kind of things. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Amazing. And again, very glad to have someone like you supporting us with great ideas, and now also obviously the community with your great insights. So, I guess the first question always is like, how's your reality today, right? Like, how are your lessons going? Is it hard? What are you doing? What's the setup? Are you in class, hybrid, online? Maybe you can help the audience to understand what is your personal situation.
Sure. So in Indiana right now, the state has left it up to every individual school how they are running their particular schedule. Many of them are defaulting to hybrid schedules. So like, they'll have half of kids, at a time or something of that nature, of course. So you get this very kind of hodgepodge setup depending on what school district you're in, right? My current reality that I'm kind of going through right now is we started off the year 100% full in person. And then they realized, oh gosh, there's still a coronavirus pandemic happening because we had a few outbreaks at our school. And then we went full online for about a week. And then we shifted to a hybrid schedule. So I only had half my kids at any given time. Half were online. They were supposed to be working on the same material simultaneously. Some teachers did that. They attempted to do that synchronously, like through, having them on Zoom at the same time. And others attempted to do it asynchronously. And now we are full 100% back in person again. Even though currently our rates in Hendricks County, where I teach, are currently on the rise. So it's really, really hard right now. Is basically what I'll tell you what teaching is like in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic. And I know that's not very vivid or descriptive, but like I feel basically like in the classroom every single time that I have to make a decision about like, am I going to get close to the student, or did the student just touch that and do I have to go clean it? So like if you've ever seen the movie like Monsters Inc. and there's the monster who follows around like cleaning up the mucus after any time the other monsters go anywhere, that's basically kind of what I do. Yeah. But I'm trying to teach at the same time. And so like trying to think about the fact of like keeping my family safe and, keeping also my students safe for me potentially is exhausting. So there are basically, I will tell you, if I was not as familiar with ed tech as I am right now, I would not make it through this current semester. And this is the hardest year I've ever gone through in teaching in all my 7 years. So it's really difficult.
Yeah. So I fully understand that. And obviously we know from our community that many teachers are struggling, trying to figure out how to make, the best out of it. And, you said yourself, you've been actually teaching and wrote a book about ed tech. Many teachers have not had that experience, right? Yeah. And so I think what we would, love to support our community with is a few insights on, you've used Classtime before in class, right?
Yes.
And now you need a lot of flexibility moving, online, hybrid, back into class. So maybe, for our readers to know, Nate wrote an entire article about this. You can find it in the following link. just to give you here a quick glimpse why Classtime is the ideal remote learning platform, obviously, but also in class. And Nate was sharing some ideas. But I'd like to know from you, just on the voice line, like, how do you compare it to before, and how do you use it today in this, constantly changing and very demanding environment?
The good news is that in terms of how I use it in the classroom, not a lot has changed. And I know that's not going to sound like the most satisfying answer of all time, but it actually is, because that means that I don't have to go back and completely reinvent how I'm teaching. So something big that I would preach for anybody out there encountering teaching in coronavirus and having to think about, like, especially because what I'm in currently is I have so many students out who are even though we're full back in person, who are out because they've had to isolate because they've been exposed. And so I'm still basically doing the same amount of work on hybrid that I am, now, that even though my kids are all the way back, which means that if I'm using something like Classtime, what I do in the classroom is still like my basically what I would recommend is that try to think about cloning yourself in terms of like the experience that students have online should be basically the exact same experience that they would have in person. And so, for example, like when I send them a Classtime link, like to whether it's to do a warm up or an exit ticket or something of that nature, that experience for them inside the classroom is still the exact same as if they were outside. I'm still having them do the same metacognitive practices. When I'm having them, okay, guys, let's do some metacognition at the end of this lesson. Or it could be, hey, let's do some retrieval practices on something we learned a few classes ago. That experience is ubiquitous. And why that really matters is, especially with COVID, and because you have students in so many different circumstances at the same time, they can do it asynchronously, and it also saves you a ton of time because you don't feel like you have to go and make two different versions of your classroom, which takes so much time. So I would especially caution anybody out there, if you're trying to do something that feels like you're making two different versions of your classroom, like one in person and one online, you're probably trying too hard. So
that's interesting to hear, and I think that's great advice for people to think about how to think about online and also then in-class teaching. But one interesting point you did mention, like the metacognition. Maybe you can give a practical insight into what exactly did you do, what do you ask, and how do you do it with Classtime?
Sure.
In that particular example, for example, right, metacognition.
Yeah. So if I'm, for example, like let's say, because I try not in my classroom to, I teach history, and like the traditional history curriculum is like you lecture for a really long time, right? I don't lecture for any longer than about 15 to 20 minutes. And what I might do is that then at the end of that 15 to 20 minutes, I'll say, okay, guys, click this button on PowerPoint or Google Slides, whatever, we're using, and it will just instantly log them into a Classtime session.
So you put the Classtime session links that you can copy from the session straight into a Google slide or a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
You embed it.
That way it takes out all I have to type in the letters, and
so the kids, they see the curriculum right on that presentation, what you're teaching them, but then you build into one slide like a Classtime breakout. I see.
Exactly. So like if you're more familiar with like HyperDocs, it's like that, but I call them hyper slides because then I can have the information in slide view.
Perfect.
So yeah, so the kids have the same slide presentation that I do. I just simply then they say, okay, we've hit the end of this, and it might jump into a session where it says summarize what you've learned in exactly 5 words, and that's the entire Classtime session. It's not super in depth or complicated, but it forces the students to take a moment and to process what they've just learned. And again, the great thing about it is for those students who I don't have in class, they can still participate in that exit ticket activity, even if they can't even get to the lesson at that exact moment, because I can leave that Classtime session open and they can do it on their own time if need be. So
interesting. And so what do you do, or what do the students do with those answers, right? So they're all stored, they summarize, the lesson. How do you promote metacognition with that then?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do is I will have students, and I've done this a couple times this semester, where it'll be something like brand new, like we're introducing Sikhism, and the beliefs of Sikhism. So very few students have encountered it before, but I'll still hit them with when they come in, like 3 or 4 objective-based questions. And they'll bomb it, of course, right? Because they never encountered it before. But that's okay, because what happens then is then after the mini lesson, I have them go back to the exact same class time session, and then they go and they revise their answers, and then I can see those those red X's change to green check marks on the teacher dashboard, and then I can see that growth that happened in between, before the lesson and after. And so like having students then go back and reflect on answers that they've given in the past and be like, oh, I know I had that wrong. Let me fix that. Mm-hmm. That's really, really powerful. And of course I can then always use that data, to say, okay, my instruction here was effective, right?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, just to summarize this also up for our audience. So, my understanding, what I've learned today is that you actually have your lessons in your Google Slides or your Microsoft presentations, right, online.
Yeah.
You create a slide where then students can break out, click on a link where they go straight into the class time session, where they think about, in terms of metacognition, about what they learned in the lesson, put those points down, but then you let them go back later, mm-hmm. edit them again, and
yes.
you can see then the difference, right? So for you, it's really about the end result, mm-hmm. and seeing their growth, yes. As they change their answers, which for Classtime users means that you would have to activate the setting for students to have them change the settings. And yep. It also means that your students should ideally have either Microsoft, Clever, or Google accounts so that they can log back in, or use an email, yep. right? So one of those options, not a nickname, so that students can also join back, at another time from another device, right? So yep. It makes it very accessible. It's, I guess, fast for you to also set up with like a Google Slide link, right?
Yeah,
so that's very helpful.
All about efficiency.
It's all about efficiency, correct? Especially mm-hmm. when you need to be so flexible, you don't want to lose time. Mm-hmm. That's great to hear that this has been a reliable yes. Way how you use Classtime so far. And I also think it's great that you don't only use it as an assessment version, right? Like you use it absolutely in new ways that I think for many users is also where many users use it for formative or summative assessment. Mm-hmm. I think this is just a spectacular example again how Nate Ridgway, thinks of new ways how to use Classtime and writes about them, and hopefully will also help you to find new ways to get more out of Classtime.
Mm-hmm. It's really important that any app you ever encounter out there is it's more about the ways that you approach it and how it's going to make it work for you, as opposed to how it should make you work, right?
Absolutely. Well, great. So just thank you again, Nate. I put in the URL once more. So his book is amazing, has a lot of great advice. I think a lot of advice that you can also pick up immediately. Oh, there it is. Wonderful. Actually, look what I did here. There it is. So you can use, definitely check out that book with a lot of great advice on, how to apply and use EdTech in your class. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of it is also applicable for online, even though it was written shortly before online, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it came out in the summer of 2019.
Exactly, right? And then, of course, as we also said, feel free to write us any questions or feedback you have. If you have any questions to Nate, let us know or let him know directly, and we'll gladly get back to you. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on YouTube or Twitter, don't forget to join our Facebook educator community, where we stream all these videos regularly, and we can also answer your questions, or other teachers might actually, share their insights and answer your questions. So in that sense, I really thank you again, Nate, for your time, sharing your insights. And really a lot of strength. We understand, and we hear this from a lot of teachers. This is by far the hardest school year, so we really want to make sure that everyone gets as much help as they can.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thanks, Nate, and we'll